All right. Hello, everybody. We're a couple minutes after when we want to start, and I'm going to share the agenda just for a moment so that for those who weren't looking at it, we kind of have a lot of small topics. It should go fairly quick with just quick report outs. And when we get down, we don't have a city guest speaker, and I'll explain why when we get fully going here. We're going to have a presentation from Franz, who's got a concept he wants to share with everybody called Hub on a Chip, and that's going to take a good half hour. But I'm still going to reserve a half an hour for the around the room sector stuff. We haven't had super lot of activity with COVID still with us, but I want to have some good time for that. So stop sharing. And again, we can't really go around on the Zoom. If you don't mind, go ahead and making sure at least your name is on your picture so people know who you are. And I need a volunteer to take minutes, and I am not seeing Gabrielle on.
Oh, she's there.
Okay. Well, that would be scary for all of the rest of you if she wasn't there. Is there anybody else who'd like to volunteer to give her a break this time?
I'm happy to do it this time, but
Okay.
You're right. It shouldn't always be me, but I'm happy to do it. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Okay, thanks.
And I would ask that when, because we get the audio recording and sometimes we both use it to quickly make our notes right. When we go around the room, say what hub you're with, say your name and your hub so that she can capture that, because we'll compare notes and one of us will know the name and one of us might know the hub, and we'll just speed that up.
And I'll just butt in if I have a question. It's just the most efficient way. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. Okay, and then I'm going to put my chat to everybody just in case. So we're going to blow through the announcements here first. And so the first one is the Hub in the Box. Man, that cycle, once they finally got it going, it went fast. And so applications came in. There was enough money for all the applicants to get funded. We didn't have 30 applicants, which was a little bit what we were concerned about. And then they've all been notified, and there was some extra money from that. And so we talked with the organizers about whether there could be a second round, because we knew that there were some hubs that hadn't quite gotten themselves started and ready to apply. And maybe, in another cycle they could have gotten through, and there was not. So we had about $9,000 left on the table. And it happened the next day. We were talking with Julie Bryant, who we've been working with on the pea patches. The pea patch staff has been really trying to get their gardeners to be more cognizant of their role as a community hub and do more in building their bench strength on that. And what we realized is that they had 15 hubs in Southeast Seattle that they had bought boxes for about 5 years ago. And when they bought them, they didn't have the full list of what we have now in our hub boxes, the posters and the organizers and multiple whiteboards and those sort of supplies. And so we went back to Department of Neighborhoods, which Pea Patch lives in, and asked them if they would be willing to spend that money to bring those 15 existing hubs up to kind of where our level of preparedness is for each of those hub boxes. And because they were already buying exactly the same supplies for all the other new hubs, they went, yeah, we can manage that. So that blends right into what Ann and I have been doing on getting videos so that we can educate the gardeners during COVID. We were going to have a in the field training for one of the Pea Patch gardens as kind of a test with multilingual. Remember our deep dives that we've been doing with multilingual. That got canceled because of the smoke that was on the weekend when everybody was advised to be inside. So we've got kind of a couple months here in the winter to get those videos made, get that translated materials worked out. So that's where we are on that. So we spent all the money we got out of the city council for both brand new hubs and to bring the Southeast more vulnerable areas up to parity with us. And the Pea Patch outreach program is really going strong. They're really pushing for it, and they're writing a new job description in for their Pea Patch coordinators that people can sign up for. So they've actually kind of formalized that role, whereas before it was just kind of a said role. So really good progress on that. And do you have anything else you want to add on that? And then if not, we're going to go right into you for the Neighborhood Matching Fund Grant.
Not anything on what you were talking about.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll go to Ann then for report on the,
Yeah, I had a
Separate.
question.
okay,
How many new hubs got funded?
9. Oops, 9 or 10?
Cool.
10.
10, yeah.
Neat.
Almost
Great.
all of them were known to us, except one pea patch came out of the blue, which was cool, and the Rainier Valley Food Bank has signed up to be a hub.
Great.
Okay, so Ann's going to talk about the Neighborhood Matching Fund Grant that we got awarded.
Yeah, so really surprised. Weren't expecting that. So this is the goal, be more inclusive, build relationships. So what we had asked for was money for 5 hub boxes and their gear. The 5 that we had asked for got funded through the Hub in a Box program Cindy was just talking about. So we are on the lookout for hubs that could be financed very quickly in the future. So we've got some really good candidates there. So that was one piece of the grant. We are also going to make 3 videos. What is a hub? Really, really simple. It's meant for the general public, 5 minutes or less kind of thing. The second video is the components of a hub. So this is something that if somebody was interested in starting a hub or just learning more about it, it's a little more of the details of what a hub is for and the areas of the hub. And then this is our dream one. I don't know that it's going to happen, but if we can do an all hub drill, like what we were talking about before COVID, where instead of everybody kind of playing in their own hub, we gather in, 1 or 2 hubs and do big drills and really get the overwhelm the system. So we would get video from that all hub drill and make it kind of a live action film kind of. So that's the dream. I don't know that we'll get to that one, but so those are the 3 videos we were going to create, and we were going to translate the first and the second ones into the 7 top tier languages here in Seattle. We were going to translate our brochure into those same top 7 languages, and then interpretation services. We're going to do a grand opening for new hubs. Not sure if it's the 5 hub, the hubs that have gotten funded already or the new hubs. We'll figure all that out. But so we're getting interpreters so that folks that are non-English speakers can come and walk around a grand opening and understand the hub in their own language. So if we can do that in person, great. If not, we'll do it online. It just depends on kind of next summer is our target date for these. And so it'll depend on, the status of COVID. So we'll get an interpreter regardless of whether it's in person or online. So this is ballpark. We asked for about $36,000. We got it. And we got these funds because you guys said that you would, go to grand openings or host grand openings or, help us in some way. So thank you for your preliminary donations. And I don't think we'll have any trouble getting the hours in to match this
Kitty.
fund. And we only have to match half of that 36,000. That's how this grant works. So we only have to have $18,000 worth of hours. And our volunteer time is counted as $30 an hour now, where it used to be $20 an hour. So that helps out a lot. So that's kind of the overview of the grant. We're going to start working on videos right away. Don't know what we're doing yet, but we'll learn. And then
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When can we count the hours tonight?
Probably
That's a
not.
good question. I think that I will have to double check. We might be able to, because this grant's a little bit different than the other one. It's either the day you get awarded or the day you sign your contract. And I have not signed the contract. It's still on its way. So I will double check. Thank you, Sandy. That's a great question.
I
I'm
think
not
at least it used to be that, when by the time you submitted the grant, after that you submitted the grant, you could count your hours, but they may have changed all the rules. But
Okay.
you have a lot of hours tonight.
Yeah, exactly. There's like 32 people online. So fabulous. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Sandy. That's a good point. Any other questions?
I would just say I'm not quite so sure if it counts because we're not actually working on it, you know?
Oh, no, we're talking about it.
Oh,
I,
okay,
I
that's
would
good
feel
enough.
comfortable. I would feel comfortable counting it.
Okay,
Okay, that's it for that one.
okay. And I'm muting some of you because there's a little background noise that's coming in. And what I found on the video is that when if somebody's talking and you drop your plate, the camera, you get recorded dropping your plate. So you want to be on mute unless you want to be recorded making noise. So, and sometimes I can pick up who's doing it and sometimes not. So sorry about having to manage you guys into making you turn back on to talk. The next topic we've got is just quick fundraising thing. Margaret's going to remind us of how much we got. And I did just remember that our Site 5 renewal comes up in January. And so our folks who are helping figure out what's our new email and web system, hopefully we'll have something picked in January before we have to renew for that. So Margaret.
Okay, just a bit of information. We ended up with $6,398 raised based on the goal of $5,500. So we exceeded it clearly. We do have some fees that come out of that. So we're going to net just a little over 6,000. As a reminder, the budget included the web hosting services, Zoom account, training, outreach, copying and printing, translation services, and also ICS 213 forms in the triplicate forms. And the budget, this covers 2 years of budget. So we are in excellent financial shape.
Great.
Thanks to all of you for encouraging people to sign up and send in money.
And I just realized that on our website, that is still the prime story that we have a GoFundMe campaign going on. So in the next week, I'll get on and cap that off so that people don't accidentally continue to give more once we've shut the campaign down. Any questions for Margaret on the fundraising?
And thanks to the team who came up with this and all the work Anne put into it and others who helped her edit. It was a team effort and I think it looked great. And so thanks to all of you.
Cool. Okay, so the next thing is just a couple of reports on some of the subgroups that have spun off this year. The COVID work group, and then any of the team members who want to add after me, go ahead. We've had 2 meetings and we're sort of setting the work we're going to produce as being, if there is a pandemic. I mean, we know what COVID looks like, but what if next year it's another thing? So we're trying to write a general guidance document that says, how would you set up the hub safely? So there's overall considerations that we'll put into the document. And then there is role by role differences that you might do depending on what your guidelines in place at the time are about preventing respiratory transmission, surface contact, you know, how these things can spread. And so that each role can take some steps to make themselves safer when dealing with the public at a hub. Should we have to stand up in the middle of an earthquake, in the middle of a pandemic? And part of that discussion will be, should we, you know, how would you make sure that you can set your hub up and be safe? So we've gone through all the roles. We've got some overarching stuff to continue to discuss, and some, when we run through the recommendations, you know, like, are we going to make signage ahead of time? We've got some criteria about how much is this going to cost and how sure are we that people will behave safely the way they say that might be needed. So that should be coming out after the first of the year, and we'll figure out how to roll it into your existing hub books in some way that's less hassle for everybody. Anybody else on the group want to add anything? Okay, and then the next work group is Anne and the teachable moment.
Thanks. So the idea was, if we have a small earthquake and communications are still working, nobody was hurt too bad, but everybody is shaken up, would we as hub captains be willing to go out and spread the good word about preparedness? Educate about the hub and educate about what people need to be doing at a time when they're freaked out and they're really motivated to get something done. So what would that look like? First of all, would folks be willing to do that? And second of all, if they would be willing to do it, what can we get in place now so that we're not scrambling after that 4.2 earthquake? I really would like to have something that's just kind of plug and play. We've thought it through as much as we can. And if there's paper copies that you all want to hand out, you have them sitting in the back of a closet somewhere, or you can download them off the internet and print out, 70 or whatever we end up doing. So that was the thought. So we had one meeting so far, and we've done some talking about what we think might work. And then Cindy rightly kind of backed me up and said, whoa, hub captains have agreed to do one thing as a hub captain, and that's stand up a hub. It's not necessarily educate everybody in their community about preparedness steps. So some folks are super comfortable doing it, some folks are not. So what I'd like to do is send out a poll, an anonymous poll. Just tell me what you're truly willing to do. If this is not something that you would do, then we want to maybe lower our expectations. So whether or not you're willing to go out and meet the public when there's not necessarily a reason to stand up your hub. So that's what we're trying to gauge that interest, first of all. And then second, what we did learn when we were all on the phone call talking is that everybody has a really different situation. Like for me, the natural place for me to set up is the hub because it's in the middle of a park and that's kind of where people will go. It's a very central part in our neighborhood. But for a lot of other people, the hub is not the most central area. And they thought they would get much more traffic and much more involvement if they went to like the local grocery store, which is where people are going to run. They're going to go to the grocery store and they're going to go to the hardware store. That's where they're going to start grabbing their supplies from, and obviously Costco. First of all, judging the interest in this, gauging the interest, and second, making sure that we're accommodating everyone that might want to do this because everybody's situation is a little bit different. So once we've got a little better handle on that and some feedback from the city, which we have not gotten yet, about whether or not they're interested in kind of giving their stamp of approval to our message or somehow contributing or collaborating, we have not heard back from the city yet on whether or not they're interested in this idea. So that's what's kind of swirling around, and I'm anxious to hear what you guys are thinking. So look for a poll and we'll just gauge the interest of the hubcaps. So any questions?
I have a question. This is Sandy.
Mhm.
Are you doing this in the context of there's the ongoing pandemic, or are you thinking about it after we're all vaccinated and the infection rate is back down? I think it will make a difference to people. So if you can help us figure out what you're looking for.
Yeah, wow. I don't think that came up.
Yeah, but in terms of the survey, do it as though we're past COVID. Because by the time we get this all rolled out and the package is done, it's going to be 6 months anyway.
Yeah.
So this is when the world is kind of normal and there's a 3.6 earthquake. What are you willing to do? But I had never thought to go down to Costco and hand out materials. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'd do that before I go to my hub, actually.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
All right. Thanks for the question, Sandy. That was really good. Yeah. So let's pretend COVID's gone.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ann or anybody who else wants to join that committee? Let Ann know because the meeting's coming up next week.
November 24th,
Mhm.
7 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, the next topic is I talked to Matt Offlick, our liaison at the city, and just sort of said he's been poking at me for a couple of months about what are we doing with outreach, and we've helped distribute cards, and so I was trying to find out from him what the city thinks they're going to do in 2021. So today, one of the things is they want to do better outreach using their newsletter. So I just forwarded everybody the newsletter that came out today from OEM, and you can see a couple things on there. I should have read it before I sent it out. They put in a couple of the hub locations that are running COVID mutual support networks. So call out to Homer Harris directly there. They're doing Stop the Bleed by video. And then in relation to what they're going to do more of in 2021, they've recruited a youth group volunteers. And so they've been using that youth group to do some direct distribution of preparedness material out to businesses and grocery stores and small areas that they can leave some materials. So we've had calls a couple times to go drop off cards in business areas, and that comes down to what's the job of a hub captain. You know, there wasn't a lot of people with appetite to do that. So they use us when they can, but they've decided that the youth are kind of a set of energy that they can harness and use more directly. So that's one thing. The second thing is they're going to do some more videos for general outreach, which is educating people about the city department responses. And it's very similar to our deep dives. You know, what will Seattle Public Utilities do? What will the fire department do? So they're going to create some videos that are along those lines that we can start sending links out to our communities, because that's what people are interested in when we do programming, is like, the fire department's going to do what? To help educate people on, here's what you can expect after a disaster from your departments. So they're going to do webinars on that. They're going to do some videos and include more of that information on their web and their newsletter. They're going to work on some more video content on just basic response and preparedness. So more preparedness stuff coming up. They're going to continue to promote Alert Seattle next year, signing people up so that they can continue to send out. It's not so much lined up with the, you know, here's the, you know, area of downtown to avoid because of the shooting. It's the people who sign up for Alert Seattle saying, I want to get that educational information, so that they can get that information pushed out by Alert Seattle more. And then they're going to have some engagement with whole community on preparedness around, and you can see in there, they put out the very first thing in their newsletter this time was they wanted to get input from people about what people thought were hazards. So they want to reach out more to everybody than just sitting and talking to departments who might think that they're representing constituents, like the Office of Economic Development, you know, answering the question of what they think is the important thing for the city. They want to reach beyond them and talk directly to the businesses, or immigrant affairs. They want to talk directly to the immigrant groups, or, you know, so much more direct engagement with the whole community, and the words he used of real people, not departments. So look for that. That will be good. And I'd help promote that in our newsletters and that we send out too. Stop the Bleed is going to continue to be a focus for them, in that they are putting kits. They had planned to put kits, Stop the Bleed kits, in all the schools, and that sort of ran afoul of all the schools are not open, but they still plan, they got all kits into Seattle Center. So those are all in place. And then when they can work better with in person, they're going to continue to put Stop the Bleed kits in all the libraries and all the schools. So that's what they've written grants for and gotten funding for. And I don't know what these two things are: train staff and train committees. Oh, and then once they put those kits in, they follow it up with training the staff at the libraries and at the schools. So that is the report of what we can look forward to having on hand for us to do any outreach with. And I know we're not going to be talking about, are we going to do urban survival skill fairs or tables at festivals until we see where COVID gets next year. But at least we know what the city's up to. A lot more virtual material that we can use in the people who, like Susan and Ron, who continue to push out stuff on their Facebook pages, you know, links for people. Any questions on that?
I have a question, Sydney. If they're going to do libraries and schools and they're buying stuff in volume, is there some way they could connect with the business community and at the same time, say, reach out to grocery stores and say, we're already doing this? Could we put one in every Safeway or every Bartell's or something?
I don't know that they've thought beyond the schools
Where
and
they
that,
are.
so, but
Yeah.
I can ask them that.
It seems like if they're already up to, you know, that amount, that maybe they could just keep going from there, but okay.
This is Franz with a question.
Okay.
any thought given as to where these kits are going to be located in these buildings? Is it going to be like near an AED where we could all find them? Or is
I
it just
belie-
where the employees are going to know where they are?
And you might know that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is you put all the life-saving stuff together.
Yeah, it's almost always situated together. And it's in the obvious place. If you had to guess where it would be, that's exactly where it would be.
Other questions? Okay, we're back to Anna. This is good. Ann and I get to flip back and forth. So next is the mass distribution and giveaways. Before Ann starts talking, anybody from West Seattle, I may have mentioned it during our last exercise, but we'll do grommeting in the spring. We're gonna let Ann get through all the rest of the city and then we'll do it when the weather gets, I hit my thumb and it was so cold, it didn't hurt until the next day.
Thanks for that, Cindy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have 2 more opportunities and they're this Sunday, 1 to 2 and then 3 to 4. And I'm sorry, I can't get to them easily. So we're gonna install grommets one last time or 2 more times, 1 to 2 or 3 to 4. Check your email. Bring your posters. So the grommets are pretty big. I think they're going to be really, really helpful. Bring your maps, bring your posters, bring your those white. A lot of people have just white laminated sheets that are really big. Bring those and we'll put grommets in them. We give away masks for future pandemics. We have Prepare in a Year booklets that came out from I think it's Washington State. I don't think it's King County.
Yeah, Washington.
Those would be really helpful. They're really well done. They've done a very nice job. Let's see, we have clips you can put in the corners of your whiteboards to help you hang those on a chain link fence or on your canopies or something like that. What else do we have?
Oh, the helping neighbor cards.
Oh yeah, Neighbors Helping Neighbors. So it's a card you fill out, slip underneath your neighbor's door and let them know that you're around and available to help. If you have, folks in the community that you think would help distribute those. So lots of goodies. I think the biggest takeaway is the grommets. I think those are probably the most useful and I think what most people are excited about. So please take advantage of that. And then like Cindy said, she'll do the Southwest, West Seattle folks a little bit later. So
Yeah,
any
I have your
questions?
email. It's 1 to 2 at Magnolia Community Center parking lot, and then 3 to 4 in the Rainier Beach Presbyterian parking lot.
Okay, and they're all outside, socially distanced. Everybody will have a mask on. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, last general report is the Good Samaritan law. We're in this, we're hearing the legislator might have to get together earlier than they thought because of COVID. We had a legislative meeting, and this is on the Good Samaritan law in West Seattle here, and they were talking about how they've done a test run of trying to run the legislator remotely, and it was not good. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next legislative session goes. But Catherine Wheatbrook and I had gotten confirmation from Representative Eileen Cody's office, who is on the Health and Welfare Committee in the House, that she would be interested in sponsoring a bill that gives broader Good Samaritan coverage to situations like hub response. And we heard back from the legal office and have seen the draft of the proposed amendments, or whatever they called it at state level. And then I was in the grocery store a couple of days ago, and she lives in my neighborhood, and I always talk to one of the people at the customer service thing. She's really into preparedness, so we were chatting preparedness, and Eileen Cody was standing right there. So I said, I hate to do business, but are we still on track for that? She goes, as far as I know, it's just trying to get it, get the legislative session going and figuring out what they're going to do. If they are so handicapped by what's going on, having to do it virtually, and if there's any more chaos or disaster caused by COVID or governmental transitions, she said, they're not gonna approve, push through legislation that names, what the state gopher's name is, some of that dumb stuff that comes through, to teach kids on how to do legislative stuff. But I'm hoping that the Good Samaritan stuff will rise to the level of criticality that, it's one of the things that they do get considered if they have to, skinny down and really focus on priorities. So that's where we are. I think the legislative session starts. Sharon Meeks used to know when that started every year. It's like the second week in January or something.
Right.
So we will wait and see what happens there. Any questions on that?
Cindy, we heard it was going to start the first week of January this year.
Okay. Well, then I guess I better get home by the first week. If that happens, I will make sure if there's any advocacy known, I'll let you guys know. Traditionally, people send out, here's a template letter to send to your representative or your person, and we'll get that spooled up. The first week won't be much other than them trying to figure out probably how to run their Zoom sessions, but it's usually a 14-week session. So any questions on that? Okay, so we're going to go to, I did this on purpose. I want to do Franz's presentation, and then we're going to, after that, because you guys will probably be asking a lot of questions, we'll continue with the interactiveness, because the last topic before we get to around the room is, should we have a retreat in 2021? And I know we can't do it until we get a little into 2021 or something, but if I would really like input from people on, do we keep doing the Zoom meetings? Do we do them on Thursdays? The traditional stuff that is just the backbone of getting up and running for another year or two. Is there any special adjustments we need to make to COVID? Or should we just wait to talk those issues until maybe mid-year when we have a better sense of how the vaccine distribution and what's going to come out of that? So we'll do Franz, and then we'll do a little of interactive on that, and then we'll go to around the room. Any other questions before I go on? Anybody else have an agenda item to bring up? Okay, Franz, I believe, now let me wait, there's a chat. Okay, so Kayla has said she's got a momwithaprep.com. So check your chat if you're not looking at it, and we'll go ahead and go to Franz.
All right. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. Just to preface it all, this came to me kind of in the way that I often work, and that is sort of visionizing or being a visionary about trying something and doing something. And I just bounced it off my friends at MICWA. Bill and Frank are hubcaps from Magnolia Interbay Queen Anne hubs, and I'm actively work with them on a regular basis on hub things, as well as ACS. And the idea kind of got good reception. So I said, okay, the next step is to bring it to a larger group and flesh it out, because it's a great deal of commitment if I decide to go ahead with this. And, we all need to be on the same page, because I'm going to need to work with quite a lot of people, and we need to have a good product. Otherwise, it's a lot of effort spent on a dubious project. So the idea of tonight's presentation is to bring my vision forward to you folks, discuss it sort of in the ways I see it, and then have you guys give me some feedback as to whether you kind of like what you see, or if you kind of see it a little bit differently. And that feedback doesn't even have to come tonight. It can come in the future. I'll give you contact information. And if you think about it and mull it over, maybe you'll have even better feedback or more valuable feedback about this whole thing. So let me bring up my slide deck here, and hopefully everyone can see this. Now I got to figure out how to play this. Just a moment. Okay, is my entire slide on the screen? Okay, great. I'm Franz Niedermeyer. My previous career was as an IT guy at the Pennsylvania State Employees Retirement System. I spent nearly 20 years there. I helped implement several systems. Mostly I was the go-between between the end users, the folks in our membership department or our investments department or whatever, and the rest of the IT guys who were the guys that would code and build these systems. So it was my job to bring together all the requirements of a system and make sure that you know, there was constant communication to make sure that what they were working on was on track with what people expected to see out of a system. So my vision starts with this. We have this Raspberry Pi. It's a tiny little computer. I'm holding one up here. It has some USB ports and an Ethernet port and a power port and a little thing to throw memory card into. And they run with the case and everything about $50. Many of you may have heard of these. They're a hobbyist thing, but they include Wi-Fi and lots of other handy things. And they're very robust. They can just sit like this in storage for a very long time. And the hard drive in them is the SD memory card, something you're probably familiar with certain tablets, Android products, books, what do you call them? Ebooks and things like that. Oh, cameras, lots of cameras use them. And that's what holds all the code, all the storage, all the data, everything sits on that little chip. The Raspberry Pi, if it were to be implemented at a hub, you would have to consider the power requirements. To be technical about it, it requires 2 amps or 10 watts at 5 volts, which is USB power. And you can see there is a lithium battery pack in the shown there, as well as in the middle. It's a 12 volt USB converter. You can attach that to you know, essentially a car battery or anything, a 12 volt lantern battery. You can also power it from a wall using a wall port, and from a laptop, for example, using the laptop's USB port. So in my vision, booting this special Raspberry Pi that's in every hub box, you would have a Wi-Fi access point. It just sort of comes when the thing is powered up and the booting is finished. It wouldn't need internet, so you're not connecting to the internet when you connect to this. You're just connecting to the local resources on this little box. So you pull up your phone or your tablet or your laptop, you come to the hub with it, you open it up and you look for, you know, where can I connect to Wi-Fi? You see hub and you connect to it. There may or may not be a password, depends on how we implement it. And then you open up your browser and this one and only possible website comes up and starts giving you a prompt. And this is how the system would start. So you bring your own device, cell phones work, anything with a browser in it, essentially, and with Wi-Fi capability will do the job. So the software itself would be created on a platform that obviously would work on a Raspberry Pi, but this sort of platform is easily made to run on a laptop or on other types of small, similar Unix-based, you know, devices like this, or on Windows, or on Mac OS, or on, you know, that sort of thing. So if we wanted to drill with this in a hub setting, you know, in a building or something, we could just run it on a laptop. We wouldn't have to have a Raspberry Pi to do that. Now, to talk about how the system would work, let me first bring up an item that's ubiquitous to MICWA's working group. Whenever we work on our process on paper, we always go back to this workflow diagram. And I think most of you are familiar with this kind of process. If it's a little different at your hub, that's okay. I think for the most part, we've designed our workflow to be a simplified version of what the current de facto hub workflow would be. We don't have the volunteer offshoots that some of the other hubs have programmed in, but we could certainly add that into our workflow if the system were to warrant it. So you have a person coming in with information, the greeter greets them, they are sent to either the information organizer or the message taker, and we all kind of know where it goes from there, I think. So in this system, if it's implemented, if we go through with this and, you know, and it doesn't have to go exactly like this, but this is the way I see it. The greeter might have a cell phone in his hand with this application running, and he could immediately on the screens, on forms that he has on his on his cell phone or laptop or whatever, he could take a visitor's name, address, all kinds of contact information, and maybe some reason for visiting the hub. Is it to give need, resource, lost, found, or is it to volunteer at the hub, or is it to bring a bulletin there? So whatever it is, the information collected by the greeter would enter, he would hit enter, and it would go into a queue, and the message taker would be the next person to deal with that visitor. Okay, so just a quick possibility for how the greeter might be integrated into the system. That's kind of, I say possibly right at the start, because we could bypass the greeter's involvement in the system and go right to the message taker and let the message taker do all the information gathering. It's 6 one, half dozen of the other. That would be decided when the system is thought over and put on paper to how to code it. So the next person in the system would be the message taker. If there is already a queue set up that the greeter has put people into, he could say, all right, next up is Randy, sort of like Starbucks where they, your coffee is ready. So Randy walks in, he says, I have this message, to give you about a house that's collapsed down the street or whatever it might be. I have a chainsaw you could borrow. So the message taker and the visitor collaborate to create a message. It's entered into the system, so we no longer have handwriting problems. We might have spelling problems, but handwriting won't be so much of an issue anymore. And so everything gets input there. And then when they're done, the message is forwarded into a queue for the message manager. And there, the message manager will take over. That's my next slide. The message taker may also have access on his phone or a tablet or whatever he has, or she, for looking at, obviously, their own queue or the message taker queue, and to be able to look back at other messages, particularly messages that might have bounced back from the message manager. The message manager would examine and approve or reject each message that comes to him or her from message takers, one or more of them. Approved messages would be then routed to either the information organizer in a message queue, or if you want to, we could set up the system so you could also send or optionally send the message to the radio operator. If it's known that it's the type of message that has to move on, it could be routed that way. The message manager would have this responsibility of deciding where the message goes. A rejected message would bounce back to the original message taker and an explanation of what's wrong with it. Information missing, misleading, incomplete, anything like that. And then once the message is approved by the message manager, it gets assigned a serial message log number and put into a log. So the message manager no longer has to maintain a manual message log. The information organizer is next up. Am I going too fast or is this going okay? Cindy, I'm looking at you. Okay.
You might pause and ask for questions because I was thinking as you started, you really didn't tell people where we were going. They're just trying to keep up with you to go. So really what you're doing is eliminating paper, or are you saying this is a tool that could be used to put info out and used to manage messages? Can you go back to the overview before you keep
Okay.
typing?
Well, let's see here. Let me go to a slide.
Or let people ask questions. I mean, if people are going, no, we're good, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a website you go to, and all the functionality of the hub is in an application in this website. And depending on how you sign into the website, you can sign into it as a message taker, a message manager, an information organizer, a hub manager. So your role, once it's punched into the application, you get all the tools you need to run your role at the hub.
Okay, so I think that was my big clarifier. This is all internal to the hub. There's no, the Raspberry Pi is not pumping out information for our communities to see.
We'll talk about that.
Okay, so that's what people should keep in mind. It can be both an internal tool and an external tool.
I think at its core, it is an internal tool.
Okay,
It is an internal tool for managing that hub flow that I showed you in that first diagram.
okay, then keep going with the internal part.
Okay, so the information organizer, are there any other vital questions? Let me just ask real quick. If somebody's really lost, I'll try to help out here.
Dolores asked, do all volunteers need to a device to access the flow of information?
I would say yes. A cell phone, a tablet, a laptop. Now, yeah, I mean, that's kind of your workbook, your clipboard at the hub.
How many days do you think a single charge would last with the Lion pack?
I think a fully charged standard Lion pack that can charge your tablet once and maybe your phone 2 or 3 times will last a few hours. You'd probably need to find ways to get things recharged and or have a series of these available so that somebody could take it back and recharge it at somebody's generators, solar cells, or something like that.
I was gonna say, I've
From-
had some experience running Raspberry Pi on a pack this size, and it actually runs for a few days. So
Okay,
that could be a promising option.
someone else
Is
had a
there
question?
is there a limit to the number of people that can be logged in to this thing at one time?
I think the limit is only a practical limit. We'd have to do some testing as to just how much processing power we need to accommodate groups of people. But these are actually reasonably powerful computers. And I think that we're talking 20 or 30 people on this application at one time actually doing work is a reasonable demand from these little computers. Most people are not going to pull the same or similar web pages at the exact same time. If they do, they'll have to kind of fight it out for a few seconds until their page loads. But this is not like the internet where hundreds or thousands of people might be asking for pages at the same time.
I think my concern would be the power that the built-in radio would have.
Or do you mean the range?
No, I mean its ability to actually host multiple stations. I'm not saying it's optimized, but you know, the choice for an embedded system, you know, maybe it would be, or the fact that the Raspberry Pi would actually kind of be more of a client and not necessarily a radio that's, you know, best use as an access point.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it's
very
a
valid.
secondary function of it,
Okay,
but it
Uh,
could be expanded.
it could be addressed, you know, with additional hardware, but it's in principle it should work. But your kind of feedback from somebody more familiar with these devices than I is valuable.
So I have a question. Did you have a particular software stack in mind, or is it more of a
Uh,
concept at this point?
Mostly, I'm thinking LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Just because, you know, it's a commonly used one, well supported all across, you know, Unix and other platforms.
Sorry, not the stack that supports it, but the front end. Is there a web GUI that's handling these tickets, or do you expect people
You
to
mean like
use-
Apache and PHP?
No. So you know, obviously
I
you can
don't
store
think
the
this
data in a
has a
database.
front end yet. Yeah.
There is no front end.
Wait, well, we haven't,
For the other 30 of us who are not following what you guys are talking about, I'm going to give you the 20-minute warning and happy to let you guys work the tech stuff off the end.
yeah, let me continue on with my vision and
Yeah.
let's keep it on a high level. We can talk about details for hours and days because that's going to be important if this moves forward. Because there's no saying this is going to happen. It's just thought exercise at this point. So for the information organizer, there are some advantages to having this system on a computer. The information organizer, and this is something I worked with the MICWA people quite a bit. It's like, how does the information organizer really organize a few hundred paper messages? We're talking files in file folders and logs and references. We don't have much in the way of keywords. We're going to be doing a lot of searching through PaperStack.
Yikes.
It's going to be very difficult. If we can assign keywords to each message that comes through, chainsaw, gasoline, medical assistant, you know, various keywords, we can easily find related messages and pull them up and start to evaluate a much smaller subset of messages for possible matches to what's coming in, needs to resources, lost to found, and so on. So this is a real strong point of the system.
Do chainsaws use regular fuel or do they have oil? They do the 2-to-1 or whatever.
They do. It's a 2 cycle, so it mixes
Yeah.
well with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Either.
Unless they're electric.
Margaret,
You guys
was
are
that-
on the
I mean, there may be
Margaret
something-
Sanders, was that a question for the group? Oh, there we go.
Okay, shall I continue? Okay, I'll continue. Also, the information organizer could assign a category, need, resource, lost, found, bulletin, and they could create bulletins from any of these types of messages for display in what I call an announcement kiosk. And an announcements kiosk could be, you know, you think of it as a printed out message or bulletin stuck to a fence or something like that. But in this case, it could be another page in this web application that simply rotates through or allows you to click on links that show you the different bulletins and items of interest that are going on right at that time. And if that's the case, then the information organizer seems like the logical place for a person to manage that information. So in this case, we're talking about an externality, something that faces outside to the public that could be part of this system. Okay, and finally, I have it works with the radio operator on situation report template. Our group has decided that between the radio operator and the information organizer, there should be a process of creating situation reports. So if the city or fire department stops by or city demands it from the radio, we can give them an up-to-date situation report that's been developed in collaboration with the information coming into the hub. So we can tell them about houses collapsed, people injured, you know, fires, any of that kind of stuff. And that could also be done on this application. The radio operator, some of the things the system could do for them is to allow them to automate their messages, create them electronically, possibly, and you know, we have to get deep into extensions in the system to decide how a message in the system could be sent out of the system without having to do a transcribe. But it should be able to take something like our MICWA standard hub message form and convert it to an ICS 213 very easily, because I've already created a sheet that shows with arrows where every entry in a hub message form where it belongs on an ICS 213. So if you take a message form, hit a button, it'll populate an ICS 213 as best it can with all the information available to it, and then, you know, save a lot of steps for a radio operator. And potentially could go the other way too, and create a standard hub message out of an ICS 213. What else do I have in here? Anyway, you can see there's when it comes to radio operators, multiple ways that this system can help automate things for them. And then finally, we have the hub manager, who is kind of a personnel manager in this system. We would have a volunteer information form that captures data about each volunteer. So you could give them acknowledgement and you know, just be able to track them. The volunteer log, which shows what hours and positions each volunteer worked. And also the hub manager could have access to the other data going on throughout the hub to make sure that messages are proper, you know, moving through their queues and doing things like that. There might be for a hub manager to be able to log significant events at the hub just for like captain's log purposes. So this is my vision. Okay. Oh, finally, the visitor kiosk. And I alluded to this before with the information manager, information organizer. A list of bulletins and announcements would be clickable for full expansion of contents. You might have a rotating list, you know, page by page of the most important bulletins. You can just sit there and watch them go by. And such a page might be appropriate to display on a large TV monitor if you happen to have the luxury of power at your hub site. You might also have waiting line queues available to the public so that they can see how long or how many people are before them before they can get to a message taker or an information organizer when it's their turn in line. So again, these are tools that a computer could provide. So if we wanted to do something like this, the typical IT steps that I found to be successful to get this done would be to do step one, kind of what we're doing tonight. Assessing a system's need. Do we want this? Do we need this? Is it practical? We criticize it. We look at pros and cons. You know, we kind of salt and pepper the thing and see if it's even worth thinking about. Once it is considered worth pursuing, potentially, you still don't have a go, no go yet, but you say, okay, let's take the next step. We look at developing functional requirements. This means, what do we want to include of all of this menu that I presented tonight and maybe many additional items? Which of them do we choose to actually put into our system, and how do we implement it? You know, do we want the greeter to take all the information that he could, or do we want to just let the message taker do it all? You know, things like that. And then once you've developed this functional requirements document, then you have a basis by which your program now needs to meet all those functional requirements. So you design a database to store all the data, and screens to have all the interaction with us, both displaying data and allowing us to enter data and modify it. And then we get somebody to code this thing, to actually type it in and get it all working, both the database and the screens. And finally, we get back involved again as users in the testing, troubleshooting, and bug fixing mode. Some examples of database and screen design. I'm not going to harp on this. Some of the resources available for coding this, since I don't have such resources, we might have them locally within our group, but we also can reach out to some of the tech sector in Seattle. For charitable organizations, many times they will provide young, less experienced coders that they find are talented but need to actually work on a project. They'll assign a project like ours to such coders, and they can actually stretch their skills in working with customers like us and develop a system, possibly gratis or possibly under funding by the tech. Go ahead, Cindy.
Can you please make sure whoever signs on to do the coding is our resource for Infinity? Because just like our websites, you know, the students walk away and you're left with the mess. And if you don't have the chops to manage it, you're in trouble.
Well, if you design a system well, then you need to dwell on a lot of documentation, because even in a business, when a key coder leaves, they quit, they move on to another company, the company is going to insist that there is lots of good documentation so that ideally anyone else could sit down, go through it both in the code and on paper to see that there is, you know, what the approach was, how it was done, why it's there, and can say, oh, okay, I can fix that. You know, it's not so bad if it's well documented. But
might also intervene and note there are some social good coding organizations out there like Democracy Lab that they basically take it as a team, and it's not students, it's actually like a project group. But
and finally, I did want to discuss a little bit about recovery, robustness, and redundancy, because we're dealing with a computer out in the worst possible conditions. What might fail? The computer might fail. A hard drive, which is an SD card, could possibly fail. Things like the database could fail, and the card would be fine, the computer could be fine, but all the data could be all munched up. And I've just proposed a few strategies. Obviously, you can find multiple redundant hosts. Perhaps if the SD, if the this thing failed, you could run it on the laptop, you could run it on another one of these. They're not that expensive. There's ways to deal with the hardware. The hard drive, you could do regular backups. You could take it out of you could take the system down, take the the little card out, put it in an SD card reader, shove it in your laptop, copy it onto its hard drive, and then put it back into the Raspberry Pi and reboot it, and you should be able to pick up where it left off. So you can do hard drive backups, little, once a day, something like that. And if the database is munched, my thought was to program the entire system in a way that every time a message is created, let's say it's created, and as soon as it's assigned a message number, the computer will generate maybe a PDF file or some sort of data file that contains all the information in that one message and stores it as an individual file on the SD card. So that at the end of the day, if your database is screwed up and all the data is all messed up, you could take the card from a laptop or something, and you could actually print out every single message onto paper, if you had the power and the printer and the paper to do it with. Or you could transfer it on. Yes.
So we're getting close to the time limit I'd given you.
Good.
What I'd like you to do is stop screen sharing.
Okay.
And let's, do the pros and cons. And then for Q&A, let's do two things. One is, critical, I don't even understand what you just said, so not the technical, because I think what we're going to have to do is form a working group. If people are kind of like, yeah, let's keep exploring, you're going to have a technical group where you get to talk about what your robust power thing is. But today, let's make sure people are understanding what is being proposed and so that they got it in their mind so they can adequately assess, yes, I think I could do that at my hub, or I have concerns. So go through your pros and cons, then stop screen sharing. And then for everybody, raise your hand. That really helps me manage who's got questions.
Or use the chat is another good way to do it. The pros, a computer can automate a lot of the processes. I've talked about that. It could be quick and easy to set up. As soon as you get power, it boots up, it's ready to go. In this COVID era, it just happens to work out well that it's no paperwork in terms of actual paper handling and so on. So no threat of that, but there's no paper to blow away, no paper to get wet. There's a lot of positives to say about no paper. Handwriting, always a big issue at every drill, and it only gets worse as time goes on because people get tired. So that's not an issue so much anymore. Less close human contact, very debatable in healthy times. Right now, very useful. Not that I expect to have this thing running before COVID is hopefully over. The database search and index capability is a huge plus, in my opinion. Every user showing up with their own device is a reasonable thing, I think, because everyone has cell phones or tablets or laptops or whatever, and they don't take up that much power. And finally, it enforces a consistent and uniform process at the hub. When there's a shift change and a new person comes in, the information organizer isn't going to create a whole new filing system because they don't like the last person's system. It's got to be the way the computer says it's going to be, and it's going to be that way. Everyone can expect that. For cons, the system is inflexible. Once it's coded and on a chip, you're not going to be able to change how the system works very much unless you code possible changes already ahead of time. It's going to require a little bit of user training, hopefully less, the least possible amount, but so does paper. So, I mean, it's kind of this pro-con. Technical support might be needed at times. I've discussed things on the robustness part of it, for instance, that might need tech support. It needs power, no question about it. That needs to be managed. Failover and recovery are issues that wouldn't be so necessary under paper circumstances in most cases. You need to store the hardware properly so it can be brought back to life after a period of time in a hub box or something. Potential obsolescence, the whole system might just not be worth anything anymore after a certain period of time. We never have a disaster, never used it. And finally, of course, there's the expense in time and resources in developing this thing. So that's my presentation, and I'm going to stop the share now. I hope I can, because you know what? I've lost my cursor here. There it is. Cindy, do you want to take the hands that you see and I'll answer them?
Yep, I'm getting my screen set up where I can do that. And then in the chats, I'm seeing a couple comments. So hands up for, okay, so I prefer you use the screen, but I see Sandy's there. I don't have everybody in front of me. So Sandy, and then if you're off of my viewable, and I'm not calling on you, you need to go raise your hand down on the bar on the bottom. Sandy?
Thank you, Franz. I had a couple of comments. One is that we also would need power for all the devices that people are using. And we had sort of talked about that at our hub in terms of, would we be willing to be a charging station for people's devices? And then who would be the one assigned to take care of keeping their eye on all these devices while they're charging? So that seems to be one of the things I'm thinking of. And the other is, I have a great picture of great friends of mine. We hadn't seen each other for ages. And the picture is we're all sitting there and looking at our devices. So you're not making eye contact as much as you're working on your device.
Good comments. Thank you.
Other questions?
I had my hand up.
Well,
So
okay.
I got a few things. I'm coming from a perspective as a web applications developer myself, so I understand the technology and the impetus to do things like this. I'm also coming from the perspective of somebody who was in the military. I've served in the Army, and I've run battalion level talks, tactical operations centers, so I understand. And at a time when automation was just starting to hit. And so my perspective with that is, if you're going to automate things like this in an electronic way, that it has to have some kind of tie into something else other than what you're just doing there. The reason being is the military has this kind of stuff down to the soldier level now. Yes, I'm dating myself by saying that I didn't have it when I was in. But the idea is anybody, soldiers that are using it, vehicles that are using it, they're sending information, and that's getting spread all over the place on the battlefield. And so if you have a functionality like that, where you're actually pre-populating messages and sending them out and actually doing things for other hubs, it seems to have kind of a force multiplier effect. Whereas if you're just doing it for your hub, all you're doing is creating a system that you have to use, which brings me to my next point. All those kind of battlefield level systems are hardened for various reasons. I saw nothing in your presentation treating on weather. They get wet, they can get dusty, they can be hot, they can be cold, and they'll still work. You know, I can only imagine if you're kind of relying on this for managing your messages, and it gets kind of a good breeze comes in, gets water on it, you're done. So there'd have to be redundancy if you're not hardening it. And even if you're hardening it, you'd have to have the redundancy too. Part of that is because, as we know, if you have all the training it has to go into it to get people to use it, then you have an emergency happen and all those people you train don't show up. Well, you can give them a form and say, do this, but having to get them to figure out and make sure they can use the device and understand how to use the interfaces and do all this kind of stuff, not so much. And I say that also because from my experience as web application development is that you can have a very well-defined system with all these kind of things you can tag, do all this kind of metadata on, but people are really bad, people that aren't me, because I'm a metadata geek, people are really bad at actually being complete and using systems because they don't always understand it. And so you may not get the features you're thinking you're getting out of it to get the data you think you're going to get out of it at the end of it. So redundancy, you know, all this kind of stuff, if it doesn't have a force multiplier aspect to it, where you're sending information somewhere else, quite frankly, as a hubcap, I'm probably going to go with paper. So it's worth trying out. I think for something other than a full rip or a major scenario, this could be great. I think once you get to something where everybody's panicking and there's no power around, that it's going to be less useful, just out of human nature. So that's my comments.
So there was some comments going along in the chat. We've already got a Slack channel set up for the techs who want to, take on some of the topics brought up by Tom and the more technical level. I have a question, Franz. I don't see any other hands yet. We have said that we're going to have to use all sorts of volunteers who show up at the moment, and all our training is predicated around OJT, you know, someone who goes, yeah, I saw this hub thing once and I'm here to help. And what do you want me to do? And I go, I want you to be message manager. How am I going to train someone who walked up with a phone and they may not even have brought their phone because they didn't think they had to use it, and I have to OJT them into a technical system. So the pros and cons, you know, what I would hope is we could still not walk away from an analog system, but find a way that a digital system that relieves us of some of the crazy, boring stuff we have to do, like reading people's handwriting that we can't, or recompiling reports when it could have been all put in electronically. Maybe there's a way to cascade the most impactful features first, and then we struggle with the, you know, so how will I take my mom who doesn't even have a cell phone and make her a message taker? Oh, you can't do technology, throw you away. I can't use you as a volunteer at that position. So that's one comment. And the other is, when you talk about, we could put in, I really see the value because of the COVID committee talking about how will you have people standing in front of your one whiteboard and trying to distance them, and you know, how could we put the information that we're posting on the whiteboards out through a network? And I didn't quite understand how I walk up to the hub and I go, this is a whiteboard, I'm going to take a picture of it. Or, hey, I've got on my phone when I'm within 15 feet of the hub, all their bulletins. Can I capture that and walk back to my block with it?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. My initial view is that these are web pages. You could take screenshots of them, or you could, you know, when you walk away, you no longer have the web, and that's the end of it. You might also be able to cache them in the reading list or something like that. But yeah, those are things to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd also be concerned with security if somebody was, you know, if your whole hub is relying on this, a lot of people are putting data into it. If somebody was malicious, they could wipe out a lot of information that we're relying on very quickly without even being on site if they had a line of sight to the device. So, I mean, that's just, you know, scratching the surface of security concerns. But, you know, I certainly see a lot of pros and cons, and I think it's worth exploring. So look forward to discussing on Slack more.
Yep, I just got notification of the Slack channel name. So if you're not on Slack and you want to be, if you want to be a part of this, you have to be at least technical enough to get into Slack. You know, if you can't get to Slack, then, you know, we can see where the cutoff's going to be. Other questions? Anything else you want to add then, Franz?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening and, you know, maybe hearing some stuff you didn't understand. But anyway, I think everyone gets the gist of the idea. And, you know, if you think about it and you want to get back to me, just remember my email. I gave it briefly. It's n3hfs, which is my call sign at yahoo.com.
Yeah, Franz, I would like you to send an email tomorrow out to the hub captains saying, you know, following up from the hub and ship, who would like to who would I need to make sure is engaged, right? I would assume they're going to go to the Slack, but we do have hub captains who may not always read the minutes, or they're out of town and would want to be involved. So a direct email saying, read the minutes, watch the video, catch up on this, contact me if you want to be a part of it.
There's a quick question here. It says, how much would this system need to rely on cloud storage, such as Google Docs or Slack? It's completely unreliant on the internet. It is self-contained. The card that you put in it, the SD card, could be many, many gigabytes. These days, they're huge. I can't imagine that the kind of text data that we would put into them would be anywhere near their capacity. So there would be room on such a card for a library of hub manuals and other resources that could be referred to. So it could also be a valuable library to hub managers and hub operators.
So just based on what I saw, I'm not seeing anybody going, oh my God, you know, stop, no, go, no. So let's keep poking at it until you get to the point where we go, oh my God, that's what it really means. So, all right, we're gonna go ahead and switch off of that then. Okay.
Thank you.
Very much, Franz. All right, so the go back to the retreat thing. Is there anybody, I think my proposal is we traditionally have it in January. There's no way. So I'm thinking I would like to target, we have a hub captain meeting normally in January, then we have one in March. I kind of would like to target April for a retreat in the hopes that we can gather enough. And, you know, even if we have to do 3 sector rooms or we do breakouts or something, but April still gives us enough time to plan in-person type things if we're allowed to do them in the summer. And, you know, I still have not lost our vision of let's do one big hub exercise. That still may be where we pick up next year. So, is there anybody who would object to targeting a hub retreat in April?
Cindy, if it's in person, I don't know how many people feel like they need to have the vaccine. I'm one of those people that I'm not doing anything like that without the vaccine. So I doubt that we'll have it by April, but maybe others are more optimistic.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that the vaccine may not make it, but I'm being optimistic that maybe in April, it will have slowed down enough where we can have 3 Zoom rooms, you know, 3 physical rooms, you know, the Southwest people. So we have a little bit of people interactivity. I don't know, but I'd rather not just keep floating because trying to pick a date with you guys is murder. And so if I can just go plan on April, whatever the 4th Thursday is or whatever, or a Saturday, and put it on calendars, and then we pick it up and move it when we get close enough. Is that, but I don't think I want to wait until the summer, because I think as soon as people can go back to doing street festivals and outreach events, we're going to be doing it. And then it'll be a little late to scramble. So totally respect that if vaccines aren't working or there's problems, we will cancel it. Ann?
Cindy, is this something you would consider doing virtually, like a Zoom meeting?
It would be painful. I mean, because it's a lot of decision making, and it's hard getting questions, you know, queued up. But, you know, if we had to, we have to. We could do a retreat by email if we had to, because it's really, what nights are we meeting? You know, are we going to continue to do deep dives? And then part of the Cindy getting out of business is who's going to take over the hub captain meetings next year, right? That's one of the big ones. So.
I vote Ann.
Kyla?
I said I vote Ann take over.
Nice idea.
So that's why. So I can try doing it by email. You know, I don't have a problem saying who wants to run the hub captains. Then that gets me out of January and on.
So this is Gabrielle. I would propose that we pick a date for April, and we consider that maybe some people could attend virtually and some people could attend live. And if we all attended virtually, maybe we think about, you know, people are doing classes and webinars and lectures. Maybe there's some way to smooth some of the issues we have just meeting over Zoom in terms of somebody else running questions and other things that we could do.
Okay.
And perhaps you also want to think about a date for the fall, just pick something. And then maybe in the fall, we'd be in a place where we could gather together as well. And you'd have a date on the calendar, which I know you really like to have that there as a marker.
Yep.
So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. So somewhere around the first of the year, I'll send out a couple of Saturday dates to see if we can pick one that doesn't overlap with the, you know, the Super Bowl or something. So, but there are a couple of things that we need to tee up. The other thing that a retreat helps us define, which the fundraising committee had sort of gotten to, the, you know, stage 1 was how will we allocate money? And so one is when we're doing stuff for the network, right now it's been, hey, if Cindy's paying for it, I don't care. I get to say, I'm going to go buy, or Ann has done the same thing. But if we're gonna say, we're gonna order a bunch of Raspberry Pis and it's gonna be $2,000 out of the fund, you know, is there a approval process or how do we do that? So those are the sort of things I'm lining up that the retreat has to address. So that's why sooner rather than later is more helpful, even if it is all Zoom. So, okay, so thank you, Gabrielle. Any other proposals other than in April and other bit than being prepared to do both either in person or virtual?
Hey, this is Ian.
Yep.
I mean, I would just say, like, personally, April seems like very early in terms of COVID. From the tech sector, I don't know of any of the big companies that are realistically planning a return to normalcy before June or so. If that's a useful data point.
Then how
Yeah,
about
we're at
June?
June currently.
I mean, you know, I don't think any summer stuff's going to get away until June. So if we did it in early June,
Yeah, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable even proposing a date for an in-person meeting at this time, but that's just me.
Yeah, I have to agree with that based on everything I've heard and seen. It seems like so much is unknown. If any date that we would choose, it would be very tentative.
okay. So and I'm good. I just want to get some decisions made. So let's go. It's not in person, and it's going to be Zoom or email. Which would you guys prefer to do?
Zoom.
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 Yeah, Zoom.
So now I'm back into January, February. So maybe what we'll do is we won't do the February deep dive. How about that? We'll do a regular Hub Captains meeting in January. Ugh. Well, we'll shoot for kind of a February. January is too early. You know, people are just coming out of the holidays and they're just trying to figure out, oh yeah, we're back to normal patterns again. So I'll shoot for February. That's traditionally when we seem to have it. And I'll pick a Saturday and we'll, who was it? Was it Kayla? Who was it who said, you know, there's ways to run highly interactive meetings, which these meetings are usually not so much, and take the edges off. Ian says Zoom with prep and Slack.
We could do a lot with sending people to breakouts, asking them to come back with some ideas and report out. I was in a meeting the other day where they use something called Jamboard. It's like a whiteboard where you stick Post-its on, and then they came back and people read that. And that was kind of, it was fun because it was very visual to look at that. So it was very simple, but so definitely we could do a few things like that.
Okay.
The county just did a bunch of interactive ICS 300 classes via Zoom. And what worked really well was breakout sessions that were predetermined and then also polling, Zoom polling.
Yeah,
As a way to get the feedback that you're looking for.
Okay, I've done breakouts and Anne's practiced more with polling. I've done a whiteboard one, and the group I was with, you know, it was our first time seeing it, and we spent all our time being confused. I know the young person doing the whiteboard, filling out the Post-its and moving them around, she knew what we were doing. We could not figure it out. So, and then the comment about Zoom with prep and Slack, only 30 of our 75 Hub Captain on our list are in Slack. So Slack is not a place where everybody is. So that, just be aware of that. So, all right.
I mean, there might even be like somebody like Matt or somebody who's super techie who might be able to, I'm volunteering Matt, of course, but anybody who might be super techie that can do ahead of time a intro to Zoom on how to do all the different things that will be expected to do, and offer like a 15-minute little training session or a video that they can then send out or something. And so that'll make that's something that the county did as well, as they had like a login at this time and we'll go over all the things and we'll put you into breakout rooms and the different whatevers that we were expected to do, so that come that day, it was really easy and streamlined and everyone knew what to expect.
Yeah, could put together a little bit. Zoom actually has pretty good training on their website, though. They have a whole video series getting started. I think it's training.zoom.com. Support. Yeah, if you go to support.zoom.us, there's a whole training series they've got.
Yeah, and then people aren't sitting there going, how do I raise my hand? Or how do I
I
do
know.
X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, here's where I'm coming from. So normally it's hard enough to create the retreat for the hub captains to think through all the issues and figure out how to bring them to people and how to get participation and how to get the results. And now so that's a lot of work right there. And now bringing 60 people up to speed on how to do that on an online environment. So thank you for the suggestion of doing some pre-stuff, but that makes me want to have that date locked in so that I can back off and do all these other preparatory steps for the hub captains. So, all right, I will look for a date out in February, I think, just to have the conversation and plan on Zoom. And if we don't make it very far, then we'll be looking at it and going, well, what does in-person look like? Is it really middle of summer? Maybe we'll have to try another Zoom thing. Maybe we just won't get as much done at this retreat that we might normally do. So other input, this is helpful. It helps me think about how I'm going to have to structure this. Okay. And I will scale it down to really essential things. Sometimes we talk about what does our outreach look like, and I think we don't have to worry about that this year. So, all right, we're on to around the room. So I'm going to do the sectors again. And so I'm going to start at the bottom southeast and go this, back and forth across the way. So get ready to unmute yourself for your area, and we'll start with anybody in the southeast sector, name and hub for the minutes, and then what do you got going on? And Ron Angeles said, since he still has his conflicting music lessons on Thursdays, he said he's been passing out information to his neighborhood and through Facebook, and he works a lot with Susan Sanders on what goes up on the Bean network. And so they've been doing a lot of outreach, particularly around COVID and some of that level of preparedness. Anybody else in Southeast? So Southwest, I'm going to say a little bit for all the hubs to hear, and then if any of the other hub captains want to add in. We did an exercise a couple weeks ago where we had a team of bike riders come to us and say, we'd really like to learn how to ride between the hubs because we think we can act as helpers, messengers, carriers. They aren't carrier bike people, but they want to be aids to first responders. And so their first goal was just to see if they could ride the West Seattle Peninsula in a 2-hour time limit. And what we devised was the mask that Anne is handing out and the hand sanitizer. We gave that to each bike rider and said, here's the map of hubs. And we wrote an exercise for them to go to a hub, deliver the mask, and then pick up a 5-pound load and take it to another hub. So it was a pretty simple exercise. Good results. We were using the GRMS radios so that we could have the hubs tell each other, what's going on. Like, hey, the bike riders just left my location, and the bike riders were on another channel so that they could figure out what they did. So our lessons learned were communications always is tough. And a couple of people who had equipment failures or their antennas weren't where they expected them to be. And so we had to do some relay invention with radio communications. We had a lot of creative hub captains who, for their 5-pound books, Dolores sent disaster preparedness handbooks. We had all sorts of things going back and forth between the hubs, but it was super easy to organize. It was pretty much no contact, and it was good to engage a group of the community with the hubs. And so if anybody wants to do that with like a Boy Scout troop, a Girl Scout troop, somebody who's been saying they want to get involved, we've got kind of like the template you can use to do that. And then I'll let any of the West Seattle hub captains add any of their observations.
This is Dolores. It was actually good to have some glitches. The announcement of Biden winning the election caused Easy Street traffic jam in Alaska Junction. So net control was, somebody that was out there, and, that sort of he set the tone for how things would go. We initially were given instructions and clarification that helped in incrementally revising as needed when bikers had chain problems or whatever it was. So it was good that things didn't go really smoothly, because it was how do you figure it out in the moment. So, and then it was kind of fun to operate the radios and making sure we had, we ended with a certain way to end with your ID and starting with a certain way. So it was good practice.
Johnny or anybody else who's on?
This is Sharon at Fairmont. Our hub is at Providence Mount St. Vincent, and a pretty prominent area of a commingled parking lot area. There was a lot of inquisitive people that wanted to know what was going on. And as I told them that we were waiting for a bicycle rider to come and deliver me something, and then I was going to hand off something to be taken to another hub, they found that interesting. But clearly it brought home the idea that if you're going to have an exercise, even if it's only 48 degrees outside, you need to dress for the event. Because I sat in my car for 2.5 hours and I didn't think I was going to be able to get out of it. It was cold.
Yes, it was. Okay, anybody else from Southwest with anything else? Oh, I do have a, couple of the boxes were awarded here in West Seattle and High Point and Highland Park. And so the boxes have started being delivered. So that's some nice progress there.
I did want to comment on the delivery of the goods from the for the hub box. It turns out that they're putting Department of Neighborhood's phone number and not the phone number that, I don't know if it just happened for me, but if folks are receiving their packages, not the box, but their supplies, check to see whose phone number they actually put, because I did not get a call. Because of the COVID restrictions adding up, everything changed at the location. So the person who received the package wasn't the one who I had already notified. And so when they tried to track down what the deal was, who is this Johnny guy, there was a bit of confusion. It got straightened out, but yeah, double check the phone numbers right. Yeah. I don't know if we can do anything about it at this point, so they probably already ordered all the supplies.
Yeah. Well,
and I'll remind you, Cindy, when they delivered my box, which was a couple summers ago, they were delivering it to my location and not to me. And that could have been how I filled the information out. We never quite got to the root of that. So there's definitely something around that wasn't quite right. I know on my end, that was a big challenge for me.
We actually tried to fix that with this new round, but what Johnny's pointing out is a whole different problem with the phone numbers being off. So I see Brianna writing down, so heads up, Hub in a Box people. Okay, Central, then we're gonna go Central East, Central Core, and then Central West. So Central East, I have from Judkins, Diane couldn't be on tonight, but she's had a box in work that she got through a Neighborhood Matching Fund grant. The emergency manager for parks has been super busy, but he finally connected with her, and that box is about to go in the next couple of weeks. So we're one more box down. So anybody else? I think I see Gina, and anybody else from Central East?
Is that me?
Who said that?
Me.
I can't. I gotta find out where people
Margaret.
are. Oh, Margaret.
Yeah,
no,
Margaret.
Yes, you're Central. Well, whatever. You're good.
Oh, am I Central West? I don't know what I am.
I think you're Central Core, but you're good enough. Go for it.
Oh, well, we had a Zoom meeting, the whole team. We added a couple of people and caught them up on a lot of the materials that we've been receiving, all of us, and information about our deep dives, and a lot of interest in the floating homes to get their docks organized.
Great. Anybody else from Central East? And then Central Core, that would probably be Belltown and West Edge. I don't see Linda. Anything from Central?
I'll go. Steve Hall from Belltown, and we're still in our growing mode. There's still just 3 of us involved, and we're trying to get more people. And toward that end, I went to the virtual Belltown Community Council meeting last Wednesday and did a presentation, and there was a lot of interest. So we're hoping to get some volunteers, and a lot of people. It was mostly just to let people know that the hub is there, and also to let them know how much they're going to be on their own if the big one really does happen. And then one other thing I'm working on, sort of along the same lines, is there's a Belltown Condo Connection, a new group of condominiums, and they're trying to organize all of the condo associations. And I have a meeting with that group's president, and we're going to try to get some connection, maybe some people to get involved with the hub. So that's what we got going on.
Okay, anybody else in Central Core? So Central West.
Okay, this is Bill Fay from Queen Anne Playfield Hub. Basically, MICWA Be Prepared as a group. We've been meeting quite regularly, talking about things. We're hoping to update both the Queen Anne and the Magnolia boxes, as well as I'm working on getting our operations manual up to speed and updated. This weekend, we are hosting Ann Forrest and her grommet party and other handout of goodies. That's at the Magnolia Community Center, which is sort of easy to find right behind the Magnolia Village. That's Sunday, 1 to 2 o'clock. That's all I have to add. Frank, do you have anything more?
Oh, Frank, you're on mute.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? I think that'd be it. And then over to Northeast and then Northwest. So folks in Northeast.
I'll go. This is Ann Forrest, Northeast, Victory Heights. We haven't done anything.
You've been busy putting grommets on.
Yeah. We're trying to do little preparedness tips, getting them laminated, 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, laminated and put around our neighborhood on, like staple them to people's fences if they're okay with that. Just little things, reminding folks to do things, small preparatory steps as they walk around the neighborhood, because that's what everybody's doing these days, is walking around. Trying not to go crazy. That's about it for us.
The other thing in Northeast is at least 4 of the new Hub in a Box ones. And so we've got a couple of Brianna and Jason are 2 of the new Hub Box owners. And there's one at University Heights and one in Pinehurst. So those are the 4 new locations up there.
Great.
Anything, Sandy from Lake City or anybody else?
Yeah, Sandy Motzer from Lake City. I don't really have anything other than a Seahawks score, 28-21. We won.
Oh,
in the last moments that we stopped them. So yay.
I see Louise. Louise, you got anything from Laurelhurst?
I do, Louise Laurelhurst. A couple of things. One, we're interested in those videos that Matt Affleck has been talking about. We want to do a virtual connection to the neighborhood in a training mode this spring or summer. And we had talked about crafting our own Zoom 101. I know Anna's made some YouTubes. I'm not sure if a 101 is on the YouTube. And so, and then this one you've talked about, the Dream on the neighborhood grant, the Dream video, which was the 3rd one, Hub in Action video. I would love to work on that if you guys go on that. I think that's a critical thing. Can the hubs use the Hubcap Zoom account to do a neighborhood Zoom training? So that's available as long as somebody knows how to do it.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then will Matt be posting in that OEM newsletter when those videos are ready for public consumption?
Like the Stop the Bleed, he put the links in the newsletter, but I have not looked. So you can go to our Hub YouTube channel and see all of Ann's.
Okay, yeah.
And go to their website and they've probably got to go see our training videos.
Okay, great. And the second thing we're playing with, we've started crafting, is what we're calling the hub response team. And we're talking about training a group of people whose job it is to come to the hub when it's set up, and that they immediately move into certain positions, and there's a protocol and they're trained, and crafting that, how that whole thing will look. We're working on that now.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we have to make for the P-Patch folks is something similar, you know, like what are all these, you know, there's the overview, and then for the P-Patch, it's like what, you know, greeting people or, you know, educating people or showing people information. So there may be some overlap there. So we'll work with you as we do the P-Patch one to see if we can make it universal.
I think that's aligned with Ann's making one wheel for every hub instead of every hub making a wheel. I think we could craft a protocol that every hub could use.
Okay, anybody else from Northeast? And Brianna, you have to unmute.
I invited somebody today.
Cool. Is that Jeff?
That is Jeff. And I don't know, Jeff is not sure if what his capacity would be able to be as far as hub captain or not, but I figured it would be good for him to come and see more about this stuff. And also because I don't know enough anyway to be able to entice him and like get him in. So I figured you guys would do a better job than I. So.
If we didn't blow his head up with, you know, like, oh my God, what are they talking about? I've also invited someone named Nate who lives near the Westwood P-Patch, just drop in, see what it is, see if we scare you.
Yep. I thought I saw him coming in here. I don't see him now.
Jeff's
No,
here.
There he is.
And if I speak, it might pop up. Yeah. I understood all that Franz was talking about. That was all made sense to me. That's where I come from.
That's great.
That's great. More fodder for the thought process. So, all right, other Northwesties then. Under the Northwest sector.
Yeah, this is Jack Herndon from the Fenny Hub co-chair. Nothing for us.
Okay.
Nothing happened.
No new excitement. How about Cheryl or Kristen? Not much. Okay, no worries. Anybody else that wants a second go round? Okay, the last thing, nobody's raising their hand. So the last thing I had is that we're going to do a deep dive. So I'm leaving town, and Ron has promised me internet wherever we go in our little camper. So we'll see if that happens, because I've got December 8th is our next deep dive. And the topic we're going to do this one without official city participation, because what I'm doing for everybody is bringing everybody up to speed with what we know about setting up shelters. So this is a deep dive on sheltering and how we've talked about how hub captains aren't going to be running shelters, but we certainly need to be able to advise our community partners who suddenly have woken up and said, oh my God, yes, my bowling alley, I can put people in it, how to run a safe shelter or at least open it up. And we'll also talk about the city's concerns about how we do safe shelters and how they're really anxious to know where shelters will be, because then they can start ordering supplies when their official shelters get set up. And they are working on a regional shelter planning team. So we might have someone speak about that. And the third part of it is the world of sheltering has become much more complicated because of COVID. And so we'll talk about the impact, and we'll do some kind of definitions so that everybody kind of comes out of this with going, normally in today's world, we talk shelters and everybody kind of goes to homeless shelters. And so we have to distinguish between homeless shelters, emergency shelters, congregate, non-congregate shelters. And Kayla is also helping write some sheltering plans for some of the other cities. So we should have a very interesting internal discussion just about bringing everybody up to speed on shelter and terminologies and what they are. And then I was hoping in our next deep dive to invite the city to say, update us from where we were to what are the new concerns, or what do we have to change, or what are you doing, just like we did with Chad on, what's the real picture look like now, so that we all get a kind of mass update at one time. So that's the December is us. And then I was going to put Jill in February. That's where I was flipping back and forth between cancel the deep dive in February for a retreat or not, but we may just do both of them. We'll see if she's ready and available. The COVID testing stuff falls in her department, and so they've been just swamped in the COVID response, so she may not even be available. Anything else for the good of the order?
When did you say that deep dive on sheltering was?
It's in your minutes. It should be December 8th, or in the agenda. It's on the very, very, very bottom.
Cindy?
Yep.
This is Dave Wilma from Seattle ACS. Something that might be of interest to the hubcaps is that there are drive-through food banks in operation around the city. I came across one at North Seattle College the other day, and this is kind of a foreshadowing of points of distribution that would be set up if supplies were to be brought into Seattle. So if you pay attention to these food banks and can maybe give them a visit during the day, it would give you an idea of how they operate or could operate better. I'll just leave that to you. These don't happen every day. I was there Tuesday, and it was Tuesday at North Seattle College. And I don't know who does it, whether it's Northwest Harvest or somebody else, but the city, as part of its planning, has these, they're called PODs, points of distribution. This is an element in city planning that very much should be important to hub planning, see how they operate, see where they are. Maybe you can incorporate it into your operations.
Great. And the other thing I would suggest people look at is for the COVID work committee, watch what people are doing to put up with signage and distancing and how you control crowds, just make that part of, things you observe as you're going around stuff going, if I did have to set up a hub and keep distance, this worked better than that, so this is great. Thank you, Dave, for recommending a real life operation we can go look at for putting ourselves in that place and seeing how something could work efficiently. Anything else good of the order stuff?
Ian?
Yeah.
This is a little bit tangential, but some of you may be aware of Comm Academy that happens every year in Seattle. It's a conference focused generally on emergency communications and emergency management, emergency preparation. But this year, 2021, it's going to be completely virtual and also completely free. So I just wanted to put that out there. If that's something that seemed interesting to you before, but maybe you didn't want to go because it was a little bit out of your area, there's really no reason not to now. So I'll put the website in chat.
Perfect.
And, I'm helping organize that, but you can go ahead and pre-register now and stay informed and check it out.
Ian, I pre-registered and I looked at the fake agenda you guys had in there. Is that even close to what you're going to present? Because that looked fabulous.
Yeah, so most of the content from the fake agenda that I had during the testing phase was actually stuff that should have happened this year. So so hopefully we'll have something of the same caliber.
Yep. It's not all radio-centric focus. It is very much, thinking about responding to disaster. It's really good. And then the other thing I'll just throw out is guest speaker that I think we'll have in January is Randy Niels is one of the Auxiliary Communication Service ACS members who has been down working in the firefighting area. And he's a communications expert, and he got really involved in restoring communications for those burnt out communities. He gave a presentation for the ACS team this past week, and it was really heavy centric on technical, but he had some very good observations about these communities who all of a sudden had no communications and what did they do for workarounds, and his observations of what happens when you have companies who bring in cell towers on wheels or cell towers on light trucks, and how effective is it? And, it was just, I think it'd be good if I can get him to make it more community focused instead of a radio wave focus. So that's a teaser for next January. All right, I think we'll let everybody go. I was glancing up and we can catch the replays if you are fast, but thank you for letting us know they won. So that's good. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll have a good evening. We'll see you on December 8th or later.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy. Everybody be safe.
Thanks.
Okay, stopping
Bye.
recording.